We're going to wait one more minute. One more minute. From the PRN studios at Charlotte Motor Speedway, this is Racer's Odds.
Side by side, Keselowski works to the inside.
The crowd is roaring. Chase Elliott is in the lead.
Harvick into 11, right on his bumper.
Now, here are Jeff Hammond, Steve Makinen, and Brad Gillie.
Welcome once again to another fine edition of Racer's Odds. This is the show where we tell you everything you need to know about NASCAR wagering. My name is Brad Gillie. My co-host, our handicapping expert from Point Spread Weekly, Steve Makinen, and of course our garage analyst, Jeff Hammond. This week, we are headed to the 1 Mile Phoenix Raceway out in the desert. A few things make this race weekend unique. Number one, there's going to be a different aerodynamic package on the car. We'll let Jeff Hammond talk about that here in just a second. Number two, this is also the track where NASCAR will host the season finale coming up in November. Been a long time since we've actually raced at the same track in the same season where the season finale is held. You definitely want to pay attention to that, especially when it comes to looking forward to what we've got next year. Last year at Phoenix Raceway, with a larger aerodynamic package, Kyle Busch is the defending winner of this particular race. Denny Hamlin also won the fall race at Phoenix, and that race win actually took him to the championship race at Homestead Miami Speedway. But Jeff Hammond, we have a whole new ball game this week. But the question is, with shorter spoilers, less of a splitter, how familiar actually is this to some of the crew chiefs?
Well, believe it or not, Brad, and this package is very, very similar to what they raced in 2018, and a lot of the teams are very much in favor of it. But the big variable we've got to look at this year has to be the Goodyear tire that they're bringing out here. This tire is going to be giving up. It's going to be wearing. Tire management and more mechanical grip is going to be really brought into play. So the teams are going to have to adjust accordingly. And to me, if you want to look who's good and who the odds you need to bet on, the guys are to bet on, you got to look back a few years, 2018, 17, 16. That's where I think you're going to get the most accurate information. What we did in recent years, to me, is totally out the window, and you don't want to be using that as what you're making your basis as far as me making picks this week.
Real quick, we've seen a couple of trends develop already this year with Chevrolets being very fast, Toyota's struggling some weeks. But what can we learn, or what have we learned, if anything, from Las Vegas and California that could transfer to Phoenix?
Goodyear tires. That's the thing you got to take a look at. We had a different tire combination at Las Vegas, again at California Speedway, and this weekend, once again, 3 times in a row, we're going to be looking at a different combination because there's a lack of testing. A lot of times we are using strictly simulations and information from Goodyear to come up with what kind of combination as far as springs and shocks and sway bars you want to run. And if you miss it just a little bit, it could mean a lot of changes. And reading a lot of the race notes, I'm hearing from guys just like Rodney Childers, wholesale changes on Saturday night before they drop the green flag on Sunday. This could be one of those weekends that happens once again.
All right, Steve Makinen, when you're doing all of your simulations and your analysis of this race, what kind of numbers are you putting into this one? What are you looking at?
Well, I tell you what, Brad, I think we all got to kind of pay attention to what Jeff has just talked about there and follow the action real closely this week again as the teams prepare and practice and qualifying. Because as we saw last week, what happened in practice was very crucial to to what transpired during the race. And with some unknowns here as far as the aero package goes, you're going to want to pay closer attention to what the cars are actually doing this weekend heading into Sunday. So if we're looking at some of the things that we've normally used to, this is a track that I give a handicapping grade of B to. It's been, if you want to call it average, I guess that's a number 11 of the 24 in terms of predictability. Now, there's been 33 cars that have not finished in the last 5 races. So that kind of contributes to it not being in an A type of track. But there's definitely been some guys that we will talk about throughout the show here that have been better than others.
Historically, we talk a lot about short tracks, and sometimes, Steve, it seems like that once someone kind of gets something figured out on a short track, a lot of times that carries over no matter what the aerodynamic changes to the race car would be. Do you see that in some of your numbers?
Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the key reasons I like to. One of my 5 factors I put into my simulation is a designation rating. So I group some of these tracks together. So in order to not kind of overemphasize that track against others that are similar, because if you're good at a similar track that we're using a similar setup, odds are that's going to transfer over to the track we're at.
All right, well, that'll be interesting to check out. Well, let's just dive right into it. What do you say, guys? And look at the odds for this week here at Phoenix Raceway. We will start with the odds to win. All of these come from the Westgate Superbook in Las Vegas, Nevada. And as you can see right there at the top of the board, 3 Toyotas with Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., and Denny Hamlin. 2 of those drivers won Phoenix last year in Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin. Then we have 4 Fords in the next 5 drivers when it comes to who's favored in the odds. Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, and Ryan Blaney. Chase Elliott, a Chevrolet that is stuck in there. So, Steve Makinen, I'm going to start with you. When we start looking at some of these drivers, I mean, Kyle Busch at plus 350, I don't think we've seen opening odds yet this year that have had a driver favored at that low of a number.
Well, I mean, he's favored for obvious reasons. He's been dominant here, and this goes into the importance of moving the final race of the year here to Phoenix. I mean, that really bodes well for Busch when you look at his chances down the line. However, if you're going to go on what Jeff said before and looking back maybe to the 2018, 2017 seasons, there's definitely some value to be had if you dig deep here. One of the guys that kind of comes to mind for me is Chase Elliott here at 12-1. He kind of struggled last year. He had 14th and 20th, 14th and 30th finishes. But the 3 races prior, he had 2 top 3 finishes. So if we're going back to a similar package like that, and Chevy's looking obviously a lot stronger this year, I think there could be some value on a guy like Elliott at 12-1.
All right, Hammond, let me ask you about one of Chase Elliott's teammates, or maybe a couple of them, Jimmy Johnson and Alex Bowman. A couple of years ago, Alex Bowman came here when he was running part-time in the 88, subbing for Dale Jr., won the pole, led 194 laps, could have won the race if it weren't for a late race caution and finished 6th, but Alex Bowman to win 18-1. Could he go back-to-back? Could that be an amazing value?
And today, this would not be, I consider, a long shot. I think that would be a very heads-up bet if you really feel that confident, if you're a big fan of his. He's hot. The team is really working well together. The last 2 races, whether it was Las Vegas or at California Auto Club Speedway, he has definitely come to play this year. And you, as Steve pointed out, and you're talking about it, Brad, Chevrolet, the bow tie is back, folks. Don't be afraid to go ahead and make bets on these guys. If you've got a Chevrolet driver that you're favorite of, go for it. Because I think this year you're going to have the advantage on your side. And early in the season so far, the Toyotas have really struggled to be dominant like they were 1 year ago. Don't give them a chance to get their feet up underneath them. Strike while the iron is hot. And I believe that says the same thing about several other drivers. I'll mention Kevin Harvick. He is the guy who is super hot when it comes to this racetrack. 9 wins here. But more importantly, he has got more top 5 finishes than any other driver, including Kyle Busch, who is second in line, in my opinion, at this racetrack. I think this could be a potentially good weekend for Ford, and in particular, Kevin Harvick.
All right, well, let's take a look at some head-to-head matchups now. And by the way, coming up a little bit later on in the show, we're going to get into our picks of the week and really analyze some strategies that maybe you should employ when it comes to wagering on NASCAR. And a lot of times you'll see us really looking at head-to-heads. This is where one driver is pitted against another driver. Whoever finishes in front of the other driver wins that bet. If you see a minus number next to someone's name, they're the more favored driver in that head-to-head matchup. For example, Kyle Busch at minus 130. If you bet $130 on Kyle Busch, you would win back $100. But Martin Truex Jr. at plus 110, a $100 bet on Martin Truex Jr. would actually win you your bet back plus $110. So you can win more on the plus side than you can win on the minus side. But Steve Makinen, a very wise man, told me one time, hey, don't bet to win big, bet to win. And sometimes taking the minus side is actually going to win you some money as opposed to winning nothing if you bet on the plus side. So you like any of these matchups that you see so far this week?
Well, I tell you what, again going back to what Jeff Hammond said here earlier about the change in the aero package, could be a little dangerous to lay money at this point, not knowing what we're going to see coming to the track on Sunday. So as I consider that type of strategy, one of the things that comes to mind here, and Jeff mentioned before, Kevin Harvick, very very strong, very consistent at Phoenix, loves this track. I see him as a plus 110 dog there to Denny Hamlin. Interestingly, they're both plus 600 to win the race. So you're getting a little bit of value there by just taking a head to head between those two guys. So this may end up being my best bet as I look down the road here the rest of the show. But I'm kind of liking this a little more as we analyze.
Yeah, I like that. And by the way, what Steve is referring to, the odds we're showing you now are the opening odds that the Westgate set early in the week. As we get through practice sessions and as we get through qualifying, practice on Friday, qualifying on Saturday, the odds will be updated based on what we see on the track. We're trying to show you some of the value that you might see now. We're also trying to tell you what you might potentially see in a head-to-head matchup. Sometimes you can find great money early in the week. Sometimes it's best to wait till you see what happens on the track and make your bet then. But Jeff Hammond, some of these other head-to-head matchups, right. One thing I find interesting, Kyle Larson and Alex Bowman, both minus 110. William Byron plus 130, but Kyle Larson minus 150. Kyle Larson also minus 150 on Jimmy Johnson at plus 130. Is Larson that good at this track that he's that favored against those guys?
Not looking at the notes that I'm looking at. I mean, I really believe that, he's got some vulnerability. Yeah, he's run fast, but I think he's been a little bit out of control fast to a certain degree, and I think you got to take that in consideration. I think he's got plenty of car to get the job done, but here's some opportunities. The one man we've wondered about all year, all during the offseason, what would Jimmy Johnson be like in his final year behind the wheel? And so far, he's become Mr. Consistency. He's got top fives and top tens last two races. So I think you might be willing to take if you want to kind of like go out on a little bit of a limb. I would be considered taking Jimmy Johnson against Kyle Larson right now.
Interesting. All right, we'll have to look and see how that plays out. Now, another type of matchup that you can make a wager on is our group matchups. These are groups of 4 drivers. All you're trying to do is pick the highest finishing driver in this group. It kind of starts tough. Group A, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, all drivers who have performed great at Phoenix Raceway. If we move on to Group B, you've got 3 Ford drivers, 3 Penske teammates with Logano, Keselowski, and Blaney against Chase Elliott. And Group C is one that maybe I want to talk about here for a minute too. Kyle Larson, again, here he comes, favored in this group against Bowman, Byron, and Jimmy Johnson. 1 Ganassi Chevrolet and 3 Hendrick Chevrolets. As we scroll through the groups here, Steve Makinen, do you see anything with value here so far?
Yeah, Group C, the one you just mentioned here, kind of catches my eye, and Jeff just talked about being maybe against Larson this week. He's got 3 straight top 6 finishes at this track. He's been a little snake bit again. Obviously, took kind of a bad shot from Hamlin last week that maybe eliminated his chances to be a real contender in that race. He's got good speed though. I mean, he really does. He shows up at any track with speed. Usually, it's usually whether he can control, whether he can finish that race. But for this particular group, he's going against if I group him as maybe a top tier, a tier 2 driver. In terms of Phoenix, I think the other 3 guys are tier 3 drivers to me in terms of their history. But we'll have to see what happens come Saturday and Sunday.
That's interesting analysis. I'm wondering what the plane ride was like home, because Kyle Larson typically flies with Denny Hamlin to the racetrack. Could have been a lot of fun last week.
Yeah.
What do you
Excuse
think,
me,
Hammond?
coming through. I would just, like throw this out for food for thought. When you talk about that group that we're continued, I like the idea of what Alex Bowman's been doing. What have you done for me lately? And I think Brad brought it up. The first time we ever saw this young man, he sat on the pole at this racetrack. I think he's got a lot of finesse. This is one of those racetracks that having a driver that can feel the racetrack and can kind of roll with the flow. You can run high, you can run low at Phoenix, but it's very, very tricky from time to time. And we saw last weekend that tire management was crucial. And I think there again, I feel like he is in a zone right now, and I would not overlook him as possibly upsetting that upsetting that group because I think he's got his head where it needs to be. And right now, Kyle Larson might be a little bit frustrated because of the season he started so far.
Interesting. It sounds like we might have some fun stuff to debate coming up here in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Coming up, we are going to talk about betting. We're going to get into our picks of the week, but we're also going to use that as an example of maybe some strategies that you can employ when you're wagering on NASCAR. We're also going to get into one of my favorite bets, which is a new prop bet that's been showing up this year from the Westgate, and that is the odds for the manufacturer who might win at Phoenix Raceway. And we might also take a little glance early on here in the season at the championship odds because they've been moving around as well. All of that is still coming up here on Racers Odds.
You ask, we listen. Atlanta Motor Speedway celebrates its 60th anniversary in 2020 with a new spring race date, March 13th through the 15th, with new and enhanced camping and fan amenities, all backed by the perfect weather guarantee. Get 2 races for the price of 1 with the Xfinity Series and Gander RV and Outdoors Truck Series doubleheader on Saturday. Tickets for Sunday's Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500 start at just $49 and kids are only $10. Online at atlantamotorspeedway.com.
Bristol Motor Speedway is about family, moments, and memories. Here, traditions are made.
Here comes Jeff Gordon to take the lead.
And history comes to life.
Here comes Earnhardt. He hits Labonte. Labonte spins in turn 2.
Witness the next chapter of the story at the best short track in the world. Join us April 5th for the 60th running of the Food City 500.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest wins in my career.
Why is that?
It's Bristol, baby.
Attention homeowners. Do you have a house that's in need of serious repairs? Do you have tenants that never seem to make their monthly payments? How about code violations, past due taxes, or maintenance costs you just can't afford? Then call my friends right now at Quick Cash Offer. They specialize in buying any home, no matter how ugly the situation. Turn that problem property into cash right now. It's just that simple. One call and you can get rid of that home headache forever. They buy the ugliest houses with instant closings, instant cash, and huge savings. Plus, there are no realtor fees, no listing fees, and no repair costs. Just cash in your hands for that painful property. They're buying a few more houses in your neighborhood this month. So take advantage of this cash offer and call Quick Cash Offer now.
800-435-0833. 800-435-0833. That's 800-435-0833.
And now back to more Racers Odds.
Welcome back. We're headed to Phoenix Raceway this weekend, the 1 mile oval out in the desert. My name is Brad Gillie. Again, my co-host with decades of experience in the garage. That would be Hollywood Jeff Hammond. And, of course, with experience in handicapping, not just on NASCAR, but all kinds of sports from Point Spread Weekly, Steve Makinen. And also want to remind you that if you've not visited the website yet, racersodds.com, we are posting the updated odds, the opening odds, the race day odds, and much, much more. So be sure and check out our website. We also have daily updates with our Racers Odds Today show, and that will continue to grow with more and more content on racersodds.com. So please go check it out. All right, Steve Makinen, we talked a little bit about your simulation, the handicap ability being a B here at Phoenix Raceway. What else are some of your numbers showing us?
Well, like last week, practice is going to be very important. Historically at Phoenix, I have Phoenix as the number 5 ranked track in terms of the importance of practice. Comparing that to last week, California was number 2. So that goes to show how important last week's practice sessions were. So this is nearly as important, but not quite so. Somewhat of a straightforward track if drivers can avoid trouble. There's been a lot of accidents here. I think 23 in the last 6. 23 cars in the last 6 races have been eliminated by crashes. So it may be a smaller track, but it can get a little hairy here as far as guys taking chances.
Fascinating. All right, Jeff Hammond, how about you? Is there any trends that you're seeing?
What I'm seeing more than anything else is how aggressive all these drivers have been on these restarts. I mean, Steve talks about the practice sessions. That's a great way to kind of like look at, how you want to maybe put your bet in. But also don't overlook how your driver does, how a driver does on restarts. So that's very critical, as well as what kind of strategy have they played out early in the year. I've been watching some of these combinations as far as crew chief's concerned. We can go back to Las Vegas. There are a lot of people scratching their heads saying, well, should they have brought the 12 car down as far as he was concerned that day? Ryan Blaney, because it may have cost him a win. While another crew chief, he elects to roll the dice, and everybody thought he was a sitting duck, and he winds up coming home to win. So a lot of times making the right decision and late in the race. And the other thing about this race, we do not want to lose sight of. It is a very fast race, very short by the standard as far as the Cup Series is concerned. So when you get out there, track positioning, where you qualify, as Steve talked about, practice speeds, qualifying and practice will be great indicators on which way you want to go in your final decision.
Very interesting. All right, let's take a look at our picks. And this is where we're going to kind of talk it out just a little bit on maybe some strategies that you can employ when it comes to wagering on NASCAR. The first thing we're going to do is look back at last week at Auto Club Speedway of Southern California. And, well, 3 of us actually had winning bets. One of us, and I'm sorry, Steve Makinen, did not. But that's okay. But if you look at where we are in our standings so far, I had Kurt Busch, in Group D. Kurt Busch did win that group, third-place finisher in the race. Ryan Blaney over Kyle Larson. That actually paid off for you, Hammond, in spite of Ryan Blaney having issues. I'm sure you're thanking Denny Hamlin. Steve, you took Austin Dillon in Group E. I actually think that was a fantastic bet. It just didn't play out. And David, behind the glass, took Chase Elliott over Kyle Larson. And again, thank you, Denny Hamlin. That certainly helped out Chase Elliott. But what I want to point out here, the net winnings so far this year, while I'm up $390, that could easily change here over the next few weeks. And while Jeff Hammond is up, and while Steve Makinen is down, and Steve, help us out with this, because your strategy, we're making one pick a week. Your strategy is actually to spread your money out over multiple bets. And if you would do that with us as a group, if you had bet all of our bets this year, right now you would be up 281. But explain to someone who's watching right now kind of how to strategize this on a given week, Steve.
Yeah, well, in terms of my own handicapping strategy, I sort of dread this segment of the best bet thing just because I don't really bet that way myself. In fact, as Sunday happened with Austin Dillon losing his tire with 2 laps to go, I dreaded this particular part of the show just because I had won a pretty good amount of money at that California race. Because anybody who saw my final simulation on last week, Alex Bowman was on top pretty handily. So I had Alex Bowman win at 8-1, along with some other wins and other things that went into producing a pretty nice week for me at California. Now, I like to spread my bets across. So let's take a college basketball Saturday, for example. I'll take 20 wagers some games or some days.
Wow.
I'm hoping to go 12-8, maybe 13-7, something like that, getting value across the board. I don't like leaving my bets on one particular wager.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you make one bet, you lose the bet, you lose everything. With our little group, you make 4 bets, you might lose 1 or 2, but if you win 5 or 6, then you're going to end up winning on something like that as well.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, that little bit of a snippet right there backs up what Steve is saying. We've got 4 bets right now, folks, and you see how we're all working together to a certain degree, and it's paying off pretty well. So, if you go at it and approach it a little bit like what Steve is saying and what we've been doing across the board, you have an excellent chance of being on the positive side. And that's the key thing. You may not be getting, as they say, filthy rich, but it's a whole lot better than losing.
Again, bet to win. You don't always bet to win big. And, Steve, I also think you gave a great example. Your Austin Dillon bet, that was going to pay off right until a couple laps to go. And we know in this sport, a cut tire, a wreck that you had nothing to do with, I mean, could literally take you from the pay window to tearing your ticket and throwing it in the trash. But really, if you spread your bets out, that sort of helps minimize that, right?
Absolutely, Brad. That's a perfect explanation of maybe why you want to do this. You don't want to get hurt by one bet. Let's face it, for these races, I study all 38 drivers. I'm looking for advantages in all 38 drivers. Why would I leave it at one particular bet? I'm sorry.
No, that's
sorry,
okay.
guys.
He got excited.
That makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're exactly right. If you spread it out, you've got some interest in several different options. You may win 3 out of 5. You may win whatever matters. You're just trying to win. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, handicapping sports is an investment, and you got to kind of take it that way.
Yeah. So in all fairness, take into consideration that we're making our bet of the week on the opening odds. Things are going to change, and it certainly wouldn't be our only bet. But for the purposes of us having fun, this is what we're doing. But again, if you took all of our bets, you would be up $281 so far on the season. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right into it. And I guess we'll start with the guy who's won the most so far.
That'd be you.
Oh, thank you very much,
Go
Jeff.
ahead,
I
sir.
appreciate
Yeah.
that. All right,
Yeah.
so my bet of the week. Now, I did some analysis. I look back.
Hang on one second. I'll come over and pat you on your back.
Thank you.
Right quick.
Thank you.
Okay.
That'll
All
help
right.
me from breaking my arm doing it
Yes,
to myself.
Exactly.
Here, this was kind of my look at it. I went back 5 races prior to 2019. So 2 in 18, 2 in 17, and 1 in 16. And I looked at who was finishing in the top 5 more. I also did look at 2019 with a much higher downforce package. So with that, Kevin Harvick showed up in the top 5, 4 of those 5 races. He also had a top 5 last year as well. And I'm going to go with Kevin Harvick at plus 130 over Martin Truex Jr., who's sitting at minus 150. And in this one, I couldn't bet on someone in the minus side of things. I had to go with the plus. Maybe that's against my bet to win big or bet to win instead of win big strategy, but that's where I went. So how about you, Hollywood Hammond?
Well, I actually want to go with 2 bets this weekend because of the fact that you kept beating me up about me had to man up and make.
You got to put them on the table, man.
I got to put them on the table every now and then. But I also have been looking back a few extra years, and when I started looking around, there's nobody that's been any better at Phoenix than Kevin Harvick. But in my case, well, the same thing. You will see where I took him against Kyle Busch at minus 180.
Wow.
I mean, can you believe he's at plus 150 against Kyle Busch at minus 180? And I guarantee you, everybody is looking at the odds based off of the last couple of seasons for that big disparity. And I think it's going to come back to bite them in the long run.
Ooh, man. All right, Steve Makinen. I would say betting against Kyle Busch in my book right now is not something I'm willing to do. So I'll pat Hammond on the back for getting out there with it. But how about you? What are you looking at?
Yeah, that's a ballsy wager, I guess, at this point with really the 2 heavyweight guys. I mean, these are the powerhouses going into Phoenix on Sunday. So hats off to really making a good wager there. I'm actually going to change my bet from what I sent in before. As I listened to what Jeff said, and again, this is sort of a team effort, and I love that fact. And, and I love what I've learned on the show just myself in this last 20 minutes or so. I'm going to actually look at the bet in the matchup between Clint Boyer and Matt DiBenedetto.
All right.
For many of the reasons that Harvick, that you guys like Harvick, they're under the same roof, Harvick and Boyer. DiBenedetto has been pretty solid so far. His ratings aren't necessarily matching his finishes, though. I think he's maybe been a little fortunate. So I think Boyer's been a better car here at Phoenix. He's been a top 10 car type of thing. I don't think DiBenedetto can reach that level on Sunday. So I'm going to go with Clint Boyer over DiBenedetto minus 110 odds.
Ah, interesting. All right. Again, I like that. I actually considered that too, but gosh, there's still a part of me that I got to get over not wanting to bet on the minus unless it was just something that glaringly stood out. All right, behind the glass, David Stiles has had some success and a lot of analysis as well. What are you thinking, David, for this week?
I'm still trying to stay in that probability percentage that math has really spoken to me. And so for this week, I'm going to look at Jimmy Johnson. He's won here 4 times. He won in 07, back-to-back in 08, and in 09. So if you're going back to a little bit further data, he looks really good here, and he finished in the top 3 in both of the stages from Auto Club Speedway. So I'm going to take him over William Byron at a minus 110. I just feel like he'll get a better finish than Byron. I know that doesn't really jive with Steve's current simulation that he has out, but I feel like he'll come around and practice and stuff on Sunday.
All right, now remember, as a group, so far after 3 races, we would have won $281. What we are doing is we're taking a $100 bet each week. And so if you lose, then you go into the minus 100 for that week. If you win, you get the plus based on what your winnings are. So that's what our bets are based on. And if you want to take our advice, go for it. All right, we have just a couple minutes left in the show. We'll talk more about championship odds next week. You can also check those out at racersodds.com. But, man, I love this one. An easy bet could be a prop bet. What manufacturer could actually win at Phoenix Raceway? Once again, Toyota, the heavy favorite at minus 125. at plus 125, Ford at plus 175, Chevy at plus 300. Steve Makinen, what do you think there?
Well, what we've talked about with Chevy's so far this season, that would certainly seem to be the value bet of those things. Now, if you eliminated Chevy, as maybe some people have, just because of the odds, just looking at it and thinking there's 2 favorites here, then I think you got to go to the ballpark of where Mr. Hammond put his wager, Harvick versus Busch. So, and he's got What did you get on that one? Plus 150, was it?
Plus 150.
Yeah, I mean, here you're getting plus 175 with Ford. So I don't know, something to maybe consider.
All right, Hollywood. 30 seconds here. What do you think? Ford, Toyota, Chevy. Who's going to win this one?
I tell you right now, I'm more inclined to believe that the Ford's going to have an opportunity to get it done this weekend based off of the way they performed overall. And going back 3 years, they were much more dominant than what they have been in recent races. And I think Toyota is still struggling. But if I was able to take $100, I would peel $25 off of that and put $25 on a Chevy at a long shot there, because they're coming. They won last weekend. They got a little momentum on their side, and it may be another shocking weekend for both Ford and Toyota.
Again, I like that thinking. All right, Steve Makinen, Point Spread Weekly. You're going to have your final simulation out coming up later in the week. You could also go to VSiN, the Vegas Stats and Information Network, to find out a lot more. Don't forget to go to racersodds.com, where you can get all the information on the show and betting. Jeff Hammond, we'll see if your predictability is good again this week. I know you were great last year, so we'll have to find out how it goes. But we do want to thank you very much for tuning in. We're going to be back here with you next week. Don't forget, we've also got our daily 2-minute updates and much, much more. Racersodds.com. Happy betting for this weekend's race at Phoenix Raceway.